Dear one, let me say this plain and sacred. You matter. But what does it mean to matter? To matter is to carry weight, to leave an imprint, to have substance, not just in body, but in meaning, to influence the atmosphere, to shape the world simply by existing within it. And you do. With every breath, with every choice, with every step forward or sideways or back into bed. You shift the air around you. You shape reality. You matter in the living of your life. Not just at the finish line, not when the boxes are checked, not when your healing is complete, not when the right version of you finally arrives and is applauded for becoming. Now, in this breath, in your presence, that's where your mattering begins. You are not an android. You are not here to perform perfection. You are not an algorithm for productivity. You are a living story still unfolding, with torn pages, unexpected chapters, and brilliant plot twists. Yet the world often tells you that you only matter once you arrive, when your becoming is polished, when your chaos is over, when your mess is edited into something clap-worthy. But life isn't tidy, and you are not late. And you are not only lovable in the after. You matter before the clarity. You matter inside the fog. You matter as you move awkwardly, beautifully, unstoppably. So how do you matter in the living? You matter when you choose to rest in a world that worships burnout, because you interrupt the lie that exhaustion equals worth. You declare that aliveness is more powerful than achievement. Your rest ripples outward, modeling permission, disrupting grind culture, and restoring the human pace. You matter when you tell the truth gently, especially when silence feels safer. Because truth spoken with tenderness reshapes the world more than silence ever could. Your voice becomes a tuning fork for integrity. You matter when you keep going and when you have the courage to stop. Because you show that momentum and stillness can both be sacred. You teach that continuing and quitting can both be acts of sovereignty. You matter when you stay a little longer because your heart isn't ready to leave. Because you trust timing over timelines. Your staying becomes a quiet act of reverence for connection, grief, or meaning still unfolding. You matter when you bend, when you break, when you begin again, because resilience is not just strength, it is surrender and return. Your becoming invites others to believe in theirs. You matter when you walk a different street, even if no one understands why, because your deviation is a declaration. My life does not need permission to unfold differently. You create space for originality. You honor intuition. You make precedent possible. You matter when you live with your mess instead of hiding it, because authenticity heals faster than pretending. Your realness makes room for belonging, the kind that holds you even when you matter when you let your life be real. That's sacred. That's enough. That's mattering. This is not a rehearsal. This is not a test. This is not the before. This is your life, and it matters. So the question is no longer, when will I matter? The question becomes, how will I live? Know that I already do. But why does it really matter that you believe you matter? Because when you know you matter, you stop vanishing. You stop shrinking to survive. You stop rewriting your truth to earn belonging. You stop betraying your knowing for crumbs of approval. You begin to live as someone whose presence changes things. Not because of achievement or arrival, but because your very existence is a force. Your breath rearranges a room. Your awareness interrupts generational silence. Your softness in hard moments shifts the legacy in your bloodline. Your choice to rest, to speak, to leave, to return, to feel, becomes a sacred entry in the story of what is possible. And that's the point. When you live like you matter, you destabilize every system built on the belief that you don't. Internal systems, family systems, economic systems, cultural myths. Your to matter is to become an agent of sacred disruption. You disrupt shame. You disrupt silence. You disrupt survival as identity. You disrupt the belief that some lives are more valuable than others, and that yours must be earned through sacrifice or pain. To matter is to say, I am not an extra in my own life. I am the center. I am the pulse. I am the storm walker, the truth teller, the gentle anchor, the sovereign spirit in motion. You stand for yourself in the honor of life. You stand for yourself, not in defiance of the world, but in the honor of life itself. This is not a war, not competition, not a fight to matter more than others. When you live like you matter, you do not take space that belongs to someone else. You create space. You remind the room there is enough. You become living proof that wholeness doesn't threaten, it invites. And when you live like you matter, the world begins remembering it does too. Even in clashing beliefs, even in the noise of competing truths, even when meaning feels like a moving target. Mattering is not agreement. Mattering is presence, and presence can hold contradiction without collapsing. The contrast reverberates. The tension in your life between doubt and declaration, shrinking and standing, old story and new becoming, doesn't stay inside of you. It reverberates. It becomes matter. It touches everything. Your refusal to disappear changes what your nieces, nephews, siblings, cousins, and children believe is possible. Your decision to stay soft in a hard world rewrites someone else's story. You are not an isolated event. You are a ripple with no edge. When the storm begins forming, but there is the other truth I must name. When you do not believe you matter, when the world convinces you that you don't, When your eye finds no reason it was taught to recognize, the storm begins forming. Not outside, inside. It begins as a whisper. Why bother? It thickens into fog. No one will notice. It becomes a wind that bends everything towards disappearance. And that storm leaks into your choices, seeps into your relationships, teaches silence to those still learning how to speak. The belief that you don't matter is not neutral. It is erosion. It is contagion. It is a slow withdrawal from a world that needed your presence. That is why this matters. Not to perform significance, but because the cost of disbelief ripples too. That's why you matter. Not for applause, not for legacy, not to be remembered, but because your wholeness becomes a portal for ours. Because when you stop vanishing, someone else finds the courage to stay visible. Because your mattering is not a solo act, it is an offering. And the world is waiting for what only your presence can give. To stand for yourself, not to resist the world, but to honor your place in it. And when you live like you matter, not perform it, not explain it, but inhabit it, the world begins to remember it does too. Your contrast creates resonance. Your tension sends out matter. Storms don't begin because you are broken. They begin when you forget you belong. But you can remember. You can choose. You can say, I will stand in the center of my storm, not to resist the world, but to honor my place within it. And that, dear one, is how the storm begins to calm. Nature already knows. Seeds don't question if they matter. They break open in the dark. No audience, no guarantee, and still they rise. Flower doesn't ask permission to rise. Orange juice doesn't doubt its sweetness. Rubber doesn't wonder if it deserves to grip the road. They simply participate. They yield to purpose without doubt. But you, with your storms and stories, you question. Because you were taught that worth must be witnessed, that mattering must be proven, that you must justify your becoming to the eye that is always watching. But the eye looks for reasons. It searches for proof, for permission, for evidence that your existence isn't a mistake, a burden, a broken thing that slipped through the cracks. But here's the turn. The searching isn't the problem. The searching is the invitation. Your eye was trained to fear stillness, to measure value through motion, to confuse quiet with insignificance. But nature knows better. The tide doesn't ask for validation. The mountains don't explain their slowness. And your breath, your beautiful, holy breath, doesn't need permission to rise and fall. The seed cannot choose to matter. It simply does. But you get to choose. You get to say in the silence, in the storm, I matter anyway. Not because the world confirmed it, but because you chose it. That is not a flaw in your design. That is the whole point. Every time you ask, do I matter? You are standing at the door of your own becoming. And every time you whisper, yes, you do something the seed never could. You matter on purpose. You matter through the storm. You matter with the eye wide open. The shift. This is the shift. Not louder, not harder, just truer. You are not a utility. You are not a product. You are not a performance. You are life, and life matters. And that is why, dear one, you matter. Always, already, still, with sacred substance, with quiet power, with irrevocable belonging. I am proud of your life, and I always will be proud.